Good afternoon. This is TTT Live. I'm Mahalia Joseph Wharton. We invite you now to join us for the weekly post-cabinet media briefing, which is about to begin at the Diplomatic Center in St. Anne's. We're bringing you live coverage on TTT and Talk City 91.1 FM, as well as on TTT Live Online on Facebook.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen of the media, and good afternoon to everyone in Trinidad and Tobago who are listening on the radio or viewing this on television or online. Welcome today to today's post-cabinet press briefing. Today we have with us the acting Prime Minister, the Honourable Colm Imbert. We have the acting Minister of National Security and Communications, the Honourable Fitzgerald Hinds, as well as the Minister of Culture and Community Development, the Honourable Nyan Gadsby Dolly. So what we'll do first is both Ministers, Nyan Gadsby Dolly, as well as Minister Hinds, have a brief statement to make, and then we'll take some questions. So I'm going to hand over now to Minister Gadsby Dolly. Minister.
Good afternoon to the viewing audience and the listening audience and members of the media who are present with us today. Today I'm authorized by the Cabinet first to bring you greetings on behalf of Indian Arrival Day, which we are celebrating in Trinidad and Tobago tomorrow, and also to announce the installation of the consultations on the National Cultural Recognition Policy. The fact that in Trinidad and Tobago we are very, very rich in culture, we celebrate many different and diverse cultural heritages that comes from all of our different ethnic groups which are present with us in Trinidad and Tobago and which make up our rich cultural landscape. And there is the need for formal recognition of cultural excellence, as this will provide positive role models for our young people, also encourage excellence in the arts, and also, very importantly, manage the expectations of our citizens with regard to recognition for cultural pursuit. In this regard, the Ministry of Community Development, Culture and the Arts is proposing the National Cultural Recognition Policy, which has been approved by Cabinet for consultation. And this policy suggests cultural recognition in 3 different and distinct categories. In the area of cultural awards, there are 9 categories suggested: Best New Artist or Artist or Group, Most Consistent Artist or Artist or Group, Most Innovative Artist, International Breakthrough Artist, Outreach Artist, Cultural Heritage Award, Sustainable Environment Award, Cultural Entrepreneur of the Year, and Champion of the Arts Awards. These awards are intended to happen annually, and the use of these categories really develop the competencies in the arts rather than stick to a particular genre, say award for best film or award for best theatre. It really deals with the competency-based excellence in our cultural landscape. The other category of the awards would deal with cultural ambassadors, and the policy envisages the appointment of 3 cultural ambassadors per year who will promote and advance the culture of the Republic of Trinidad and Tobago, as well as promote the Twin Island as a cultural and heritage tourism destination to nations in the region, as well as globally. And the chosen persons, as the policy suggests, will enter into a contract arrangement with the ministry, with the government through the ministry, and they would have different functions that they would be expected to perform as outlined in the policy. The last category would be the cultural legend, which will be an award to one person for the year who has had a long and meritorious career in the arts, someone who has been looked up to by the cultural fraternity and the cultural landscape and citizens in general. And again, that goes along with a slew of responsibilities and also awards to this person. So this has been done to ensure that we have something that citizens can look forward to in the cultural fraternity and also expect and achieve and try to achieve. Time frame for consultation should be within the next 2 to 3 weeks, because we do intend to launch the policy at the CARIFESTA, which is coming up from August 16th to 25th, 2019 in Trinidad and Tobago. And we do intend that the first installation of these awards should take place in the year 2020. 2020. So we look forward to sending this out, and we look forward to the media also assisting in pushing this so that we can get these consultations complete in a time frame, and we can appropriately award our citizens who have achieved cultural excellence and allow our young people to have this to look forward to and to aspire to. Thank you.
Thank you, Minister Gadsby. Dolly. I'll now hand over to Minister Hinds, who's going to be providing us with an update on the Venezuelan migrant registration process. Minister Hinds.
Thank you very much. Members of the media, distinguished citizens of Trinidad and Tobago, as is well known, Trinidad and Tobago has been hosting Venezuelans for over 100 years. There's been movement between the peoples from that country to Trinidad and vice versa. And recently, within recent times, there developed some problems in Venezuela which prompted larger and more sustained numbers of Venezuelans to come to these shores. And the government of Trinidad and Tobago is reacting and responding to this reality, which, of course, we did not create, but by virtue of our geography and our history, we are having to deal with this. The government announced some time ago that in response to this situation, it would seek to have those Venezuelans in Trinidad and Tobago, those who are here, who entered legally and those who entered illegally, to be registered in a very clearly defined process that has been established for that reason. As is well known, a 2-week window for this registration has been established starting on Friday, May the 31st to June the 14th, with an exception for June the 5th, which is a national holiday, Eid al-Fitr. These persons are expected, even if they registered initially online, a facility that will be made available to them once we trigger the process. They must come in person to 3 centers that have been established for this reason. The Queen's Park Oval at number 4 Tragreet Road in Port of Spain, the Achievers Banquet Hall at number 2 Addis Drive, Duncan Village in San Fernando, and of course the Caroline Building, Wilson Road, Scarborough, Tobago, because there are Venezuelans situated in Tobago as well. Of course, they must bring along certain essential documents. They must have the completed registration form, whether done online or online at the venue. They are free to do it at the venue as well. They must have their national passport, their cedula of each family member in Trinidad and Tobago, which is a particular number given by the Venezuelan authorities to all of its citizens from the information we have, their birth certificates, marriage certificates, proof of address in Trinidad and Tobago, 2 passport-sized photographs, and other documents that might be deemed necessary by those who are interviewing them in these processes during the 2-week window of which I had earlier spoken. The registration officers may request additional documents at the time of registration in each particular case. The registration takes place from 7 a.m. on each of the days, and it finishes at 5 p.m. There are some important facts for the citizens of Trinidad and Tobago and for those who will be coming and who are being encouraged, every one of the Venezuelans in Trinidad, with the exception of those who already have residency status or who have pending applications for residency and therefore in some cases have work permits. But even if you were here and you came legally and you became illegal by virtue of your overstay 16, 20 years ago, this is your opportunity to come into the registration center and let your presence be recorded, and the circumstances will flow therefrom. It is important to state that if you do not make use of these opportunities, the opportunity, then you run the risk of being not registered. And by registration, we mean registration in the process that starts from Friday with the government of Trinidad and Tobago, irrespective of any other registration that you may have conducted with any organization, international or local, in Trinidad and Tobago or out. Those are separate matters. We are expecting that all, and you are encouraged. I can tell you that at the venue we will have interpreters who can assist for those who cannot speak English and for those who cannot, who need help. So those are the general circumstances. It will accord those who are registered with the right to be here undisturbed and unperturbed by anyone. It will protect them from, it will permit them to work for 1 year, and in so doing will prevent them from being abused by potential abusive employers. And in those work experiences, the employers would be expected to comply with the laws of Trinidad and Tobago, particularly in relation to minimum wage and that sort of thing. And it will allow the government of Trinidad and Tobago to know for certain how many Venezuelans we have here, and to be able to make arrangements for basic health care and emergency health care as we have promised in this arrangement. And of course, the right to work. So with those basic things said, I conclude to invite every and to encourage every single Venezuelan in Trinidad and Tobago, legally, having entered legally and overstayed, or having entered illegally, to come and register in this process for the benefits that it would obviously bring, both for you and for the citizens and government of Trinidad and Tobago. Thank you very kindly.
I'll just say a few words.
Yes.
Okay, so thank you, Minister Hinds. I'd like to now hand over to the Acting Prime Minister.
Thank you very much. Good afternoon, everyone. I just wanted to put on the record some official statistics. There is a lot of information in the system which may not be accurate in terms of the number of Venezuelan nationals in Trinidad and Tobago. So I asked the Chief Immigration Officer to provide me with the official statistics. And for the period 2016 to 2019, so this is the full year of 2016, 2017, 2018, and the first 5 months of 2019, the total number of Venezuelan citizens who arrived in Trinidad and Tobago through legal ports of entry and overstayed is 9,080. I would like you to pay particular attention to the fact that whereas in 2017 there were 2,466 Venezuelan citizens who overstayed, in 2018 there were 4,278. In 2019 so far there have only been 502 Venezuelan citizens recorded as having overstayed the legal period of time that they are allowed to stay in Trinidad and Tobago. With respect to persons who are registered with the UNHCR in Trinidad and Tobago, the total from 2016 to 2019 is 12,257. And prior to 2016, the numbers who registered with the UNHCR as persons seeking asylum was less than 26. In 2016 it was 26, 2017 1,099, 2018 7,062, 2019 so far 4,070. With respect to persons of Venezuelan citizenship who are here legally, 1,672 work permits have been issued by the Ministry of National Security. 631 Venezuelan nationals have been granted permanent residence, and 1,481 Venezuelan nationals have been granted citizenship. And these are absolute numbers. so that approximately 3,800 Venezuelans are here in Trinidad and Tobago legally. 12,257 have registered with the UNHCR as asylum seekers, and 9,080 have overstayed their time between 2016 and 2019. So those are official numbers, as opposed to some of the figures outside there.
Okay, so we'll now open the floor up to questions. Who'd like to start us off today?
I just want to find out if there's any, now I don't want to add up all of these numbers to get one figure. Is there any overlap between the overstay number and UNHCR number? So I don't want to add 12,000 plus 9,000 and say that they're...
You shouldn't.
Right. So
you shouldn't.
You
shouldn't add them.
Overlap looks like?
Based on my discussions with the Chief Immigration Officer, what I've been told, and this discussion took place yesterday, was that most of the overstayers are included in the figure of 12,257. Very few of the overstayers, the 9,080, are not included in the 12,257. So you shouldn't add them. Okay, they're from what I'm told, I'm only going on what I was told. This is what the Chief Immigration Officer told us, is that they are in the 12,000, so don't add them. Okay?
Before, if I might add, sorry, thank you very much. I think it's important for me to add that those who are coming to register are expected to present their children so that they too can be recorded in the process. I think that is important to mention.
And these figures would naturally include children as well. Okay, there's adults and children.
I know one of the major issues Venezuelans have in general is just that they don't have passports. You know, just if you are in Venezuela, it's extremely difficult to get a passport. Is there any sort of, well, we'll accept this, but not this, 2 out of 3, what sort of concessions are being made for people who are here but may not have valid ID?
From the information we have from the Immigration Department, yes, indeed, some have arrived without passports and, of course, came in illegally. So when they engage the process, the immigration officers, the professionals there will assess them and take whatever other documents they may have, because one of the things you'll want to determine is that they are in fact Venezuelan. And of course, we have a system where we'll be cross-referencing certain information that we have with the Venezuelan authorities in order to ascertain certain things in order to proceed successfully with this very important recording process.
Can you use like an expired passport?
Well, yes, that is some form of identification, and if it is expired and it bears the photograph of the individual and it is determined to be a valid or a genuine document, that can help in identifying an individual in those circumstances, yes. Remember, these immigration officers have been engaged in this work for many years. They're doing this, and they do this routinely. This special registration process is only a response to an influx as a result of a problem in Venezuela, but essentially, this is exactly what takes place on an ongoing basis, including those who don't come into the official process and had to be detained, as the minister might have, the acting Prime Minister explained a moment ago.
Yesterday on social media, there was a photograph of what purported to be a prototype of these IDs, the registration card. And some of the comments were that this seemed to be very genuine. Is it that the system, the security system, has in fact been compromised even before the registration has begun?
The cards that would be issued to those who are registered have not yet been produced.
So what we saw on social media is a complete distortion of what...
That, truthfully, I am told, was one of the earlier mock-up versions that was tested or sampled for this process. I can give you the assurance on the basis of information had from the Immigration Department that is not the final card. In fact, it does not even resemble what will be the final card. which is yet to be made available to them, yet to be approved by the Minister of National Security, yet to be printed. And in any case, these cards would be given to the registrants promptly after they register. And two things must be mentioned. One, that the registration process will not guarantee that a card would be issued. It is at the discretion of the Immigration Department, ultimately, as I've explained earlier. And two, that card would have security features, as does our currency, as does a Trinidad and Tobago passport, in order to ensure that it is not unlawfully replicated and create a problem.
But isn't it disturbing that even the mock-up, as you describe it, was able to reach unauthorized hands?
Yes, indeed. It is a very disturbing feature. You're dealing with human beings, but since then, stricter arrangements have been put in place, and I am given the assurance by the leadership of the Immigration Department that it is now, that final card is now actually in the hands of no more than 2 persons. We have 5 members of the government who belong to the National Security Council, and you have 1 commissioner of police. You have human beings, and we are all sworn and respect secrecy and the value of that. But yes, special arrangements have now been made to ensure that that is not replicated.
Just let me, for the record, say I have not seen the final version of the card, but I am assured that there will be security features like, as Mr. Hinds indicated, on the currency. There would be aspects of the card that would identify whether the card is a fraudulent card or whether it's a genuine card, and this can be detected.
It's in 2 days, so is it that it will be ready? I mean, tomorrow's a holiday. Is it be ready, and will the applicants receive it immediately? Now, I mean, we're running kind of, yeah, we're running kind of tight on time.
The cards are being prepared, and because there will be the need, one of the concerns that we will have, we have to verify the information we get, and therefore the cards for that reason would not be given immediately, but they'll be given as soon as practicable thereafter. And we have systems, I can assure you, ladies and gentlemen, we have firm systems in place for such verification, and as I indicated earlier, cross-referencing with the authorities in Venezuela to ensure that these cards would be handed. And in any event, upon registration, each registrant will be given a receipt, some evidence of their registration, so that they would be able to present that to the immigration officers who may come upon them or police officers who may come upon them subsequent to the registration and before the card is issued. The card will replace those receipts when the process is completed.
Just let me come in here. The instructions the Ministry of National Security has is to produce the cards in the shortest possible time and preferably within the registration period. So the first batch would come in the first few days. The instructions National Security has is that by the end of the registration period, by the 14th, if it is practical and feasible, that those persons would receive their cards, the first set, and so on, as we go along.
I'm fairly confident that this system, which is meant to monitor and regulate, will not be used to open the floodgates through any fraudulence on the part of any of the persons.
Well, based on the information, I'm very confident that all the security systems are in place to prevent precisely that.
If somebody presents themselves and they are denied, what happens to them then? So they presented themselves, they are illegal. Let's say we have illegal Colombian presented himself as a Venezuelan. Is it that they're going to be immediately detained, or they turned away? What is the process then if somebody is denied one of these cards?
Yes, the normal procedures in terms of our immigration law will apply. If you are here illegally and you are refused entry, you will be expected to be removed or removed to your
So there's a chance of almost immediate deportation right there and then, as in police officers? Or
the process we go through is a process. We have a detention center, and there's the normal process in accordance with our regular observation of the law.
How long do you anticipate this process will take to verify, the registration process?
Well, the registration takes place over a 2-week period, and we expect within a couple of weeks of that, the verification should be sorted out. In fact, we're trying to we have put, and we're trying to ensure that we have swift verification techniques, and in order to speed up that process.
Given some of these people do claim to have, are claiming political asylum, for example, what is our relationship with the Venezuelan authorities and to, ensure that people aren't victimized in this process?
Well, from the get-go, we have taken the very principled policy position that the government of Trinidad and Tobago will not involve itself in the internal affairs of Venezuela. That matter we can hardly comment upon. What we are dealing with is the outflow of that, where Venezuelans are coming in larger than usual numbers to Trinidad and Tobago. So we are dealing with it. We see what the situation is. We are very compassionate. We are very empathetic. We do understand human suffering. We have close relationships with Venezuela for decades, as I have indicated earlier, and therefore we treat with them in a most humane manner. And this registration process is really designed to be of value to those who come here so that they can work and maintain their human dignity and take care of their families and not be subjected to abuse. This will help protect them from human trafficking. They don't have to be hiding from the authorities anymore. And at the same time, it gives us, Trinidad and Tobago, an understanding of how many and what we are dealing with so that we can make appropriate arrangements in a civilized way. So that's the way we go. That's what we do.
Just let me come in here. Because of our well-established position for decades of non-intervention in the affairs of another sovereign state, we really can't answer that question, because that is not a matter for Trinidad and Tobago. We would not get involved in that. We can't instruct the Venezuelan authorities to do anything, or not, as the case may be. What we are doing here is simply dealing with a problem in Trinidad and Tobago, where you have persons who are here illegally, and as Mr. Hinds has just correctly pointed out, this gives them legality. So they move from a state of illegality to a state of legality. They can work rather than having to work illegally, because, as you will realize, a lot of these Venezuelan economic migrants are working in Trinidad and Tobago. I mean, if I believe what I read in the newspapers, today there's an article, I think it's in The Guardian, where they interviewed someone who claims to be a Venezuelan national who is working here in a hotel somewhere in central Trinidad. So that, and I myself have seen persons of Spanish extraction working in and around Port of Spain in restaurants and so on. So there are quite a large number of persons who are here illegally, working illegally, and the whole point of this registration is to make them legal, and also to understand what we're dealing with, the numbers we're dealing with, who we're dealing with, who they are, and so on. It can't continue like this, to have such a significant number of persons who are under the radar, so to speak. We have to find out who they are and also protect them and give them the opportunity to live, to stay, and work here.
Provided to the Venezuelan authorities in the course of maybe checking to see if there's criminal...
I would not want to venture comment on that, precisely because of the question asked by the Newsday reporter. I would not want comment to be made on that at this time.
What are the penalties for having a fraudulent card or for presenting?
If they do, and that is detected. If someone presents false documents, or one of the requirements, oh, I see. One of the things is that they will also have to swear a declaration that the information they gave to the immigration officers, the registration officers, would be true and correct. if someone is found to be deliberately misleading the authorities, giving false information, that can lead to denial of registration, and the consequences of not registering will naturally flow.
And I would also like to deal with the direct question. If somebody has a fake card, a counterfeit card, then clearly they have not participated in the registration exercise, and therefore they're outside of the registration exercise, and they then fall into the pool of illegal persons who are here illegally, and the normal process would apply. Because they would not have permanent residency, they would not have citizenship, they would not have a work permit, and they would not have a registration card, or they would not have entered legally through a legal port of entry and have a visitor's entitlement to be here. I think it's 90 days. So that means they fall outside of all known legal categories, and the immigration authorities would take the normal action, which is a process. You know, I believe they're taken to the detention center and then they're processed. So that is what would happen to that person. Well, I wouldn't want to comment on that at this point in time. They would just fall into the category of a person who is here illegally, and the normal charges or whatever process applies to them would apply. Okay?
Have you given any consideration to triggering the international donor support for, because the central bank governor raised that the cost, which is put at about 620 million, which is a lot of money. So are we?
I'd like to say two things about that. Firstly, the answer to the first part of the question is no. And the answer to the second part is I have absolutely no idea how the central bank arrived at that number. I don't know how the figure was calculated. I don't know the basis for the figure. And I find the figure surprising. And we at the Ministry of Finance, we don't agree.
Have you done your own calculation on what the impact might be?
You have to understand there are many assumptions that have to be taken into account. First assumption that you have to take into account is the fact that 40,000 Venezuelans are not arriving in Trinidad and Tobago in 2019. And when you think about that it's not 40,000 who have just arrived last week. They've been here for years. So if there was an economic impact, it would already have been manifested within the national budget and within the economy of Trinidad and Tobago. And that is why I was very careful to read these statistics, because for 2019, we have 502 overstayers, and we have 4,070 persons who have registered with the UNHCR, and prior to that, 4,278 overstayers in 2018. So if one is logical about all of this, the numbers that would affect the budget for 2020 are very small. The persons who already have been here and could possibly be affecting the budget, and we don't agree with that, are the vast majority of Venezuelans in Trinidad and Tobago, so that it is not rational to do a calculation like that, assuming that 40,000 Venezuelans will come here tomorrow. It is not rational. So we in the Ministry of Finance do not agree with those calculations.
Why doesn't the government want to access international aid?
Because we believe we can handle our own situation. We do not require international aid at this point in time. And that has foreign policy implications. That is not a simple matter. We do not just simply access foreign aid. Foreign aid comes with conditions. It's not free. There are conditionalities that are associated with all foreign assistance. So that's a foreign policy matter. That's a matter for the government and the cabinet. And therefore, at this point in time, we see no need to access international aid for this issue. But I want to go back to the fact that what I saw in the newspapers coming from the central bank is a calculation based on some information coming out of Colombia. There's no correlation between the two, because it assumed that we would provide housing, education, social services, healthcare all up to the tertiary level, security, and so on for 40,000 Venezuelans who would arrive in Trinidad and Tobago this year. The Minister of National Security has already made a public statement that what the government is doing is allowing the Venezuelan migrants to work and have access to basic health care, not education, not public housing, not social services, so that you can't compare the Colombian situation with the Trinidad situation. It's chalk and cheese. In Colombia, I am told that the Colombian government has to provide a huge level of support to the Venezuelan migrants that have gone to Colombia. That will not be happening here, because these people are, as I said, many of them are already working, they're looking after themselves, they're renting apartments. In fact, I'm told there's been quite a surge in the real estate market in terms of accommodation for Venezuelan migrants. But I want to stress that the figures show that in 2019, the numbers that are coming are very small, and therefore, if there was any impact, and we don't believe there is any, it would have occurred in 2018, 17, and 16, and it cannot possibly impact on the 2020 budget. So that was a very unfortunate statement made by the central bank. It is not scientific. It is not based on any facts. It is not based on any known formula, and it is based on a number of wrong assumptions. So we don't accept it.
So based on these figures, is it correct to say that those who come in within the next week via the ferries from Cedros, that they won't be turned back?
I can't speak to that. I don't know if the Minister of National Security would have any.
In anticipation of greater numbers being attracted to this generous offering by the government and the people of Trinidad and Tobago to treat them in their circumstances respectfully and humanely, we also understand that we can only accommodate a certain amount, good as we want to be. So as a result, we have already announced, and we continue to observe, we have improved our border security as best as we could. It is a known fact that we have many illegal ports of entry, and the records would show that if you strengthen the southern area, they coming on the north coast, they come on the west, they come even on the east coast. So we have that challenge, but we have improved our border security with the use of the police and the defense force and the Coast Guard. And we have not seen any major intrusions or inflows since then. So we are running this registration process. At the end of this, we will have a better idea as a country how many are here and how many we can easily accommodate, and whether we need to, and how we need to treat with it. But altogether, and in short, I think this is a most generous and wonderful outreach on the part of the government of Trinidad and Tobago, and even as a part of it, I'm very proud of this. I'm very proud as well from the reports I've had that some of our citizens are treating humanely and helpfully with some of the Venezuelans who are here. And we'll conduct this registration process, and on the basis of the facts that we garner from this registration, we'll be able to take more secure policy decisions and come to better positions going forward in these circumstances.
I just want to stress that the government is reacting to a problem that we cannot ignore. You can't sweep it under the carpet. You can't pretend it doesn't exist. But on the other hand, as the Honorable Prime Minister has said, we have to look after our own citizens first, so that the primary interest of the government is citizens of Trinidad and Tobago. So if and there's no evidence of it, because if you look at the numbers in 2019, the numbers that have arrived is much less than in 2018. Let me just actually give you, yes, legally, yes, let me just give you the numbers, because we need to deal with facts. In 2018, 28,060 Venezuelan nationals arrived legally. and 23,782 departed, leaving 4,278 overstayers. But in 2019 so far, which is in the first 5 months of the year, just 4,842 nationals, Venezuelan nationals arrived, and 4,340 departed through legal channels, leaving only 502 overstayers. So with respect to persons coming in through legal ports of entry, the numbers have been reduced drastically in 2019. And then if you do a correlation with the persons who approach the UNHCR, you would also get some idea of persons who may be coming in illegally, because the information we have is that most persons who come illegally, not legally, most persons who come in illegally find their way through the network of Venezuelans already living here to the UNHCR to apply for asylum status, and there are just 12,257 of those. Now, it is only when the registration process is completed we'll really know what the true facts are. But if you do the math, and if you apply some scientific principles to this, it appears that the numbers may not be as many. But we don't know. So we don't know. So we don't know. But what I do know that the immigration officials have said that the UNHCR has reported to them that as of now, there are 12,257 asylum seekers who would have been persons who came in illegally. And there are 9,080 overstayers, and the assumption is that most of that 9,080, maybe all, are in the 12,257. So we'll only find out when the registration period is over, how many persons are really here, how many persons are, have not been detected. But I just want to put those numbers in the system so that you'll have some facts.
So, is there an agreement with UNHCR that the persons who have registered with them and who may come to register with our registration will not be rejected, or is there some sort of
there's no connection, relationship, or agreement of any kind between the government and the UNHCR with respect to these particular people. What the government is doing is registering persons who are here illegally. Obviously, persons who have sought asylum are here illegally. So obviously, every single one of those 12,257 are eligible to register. So they can all register. But there's no relationship between the government and UNHCR with respect to them.
With respect to that registration?
No, that has nothing to do with this registration. As the minister pointed out, the government registration is simply based on identification, documents, whatever exists. It has nothing to do with any document they may receive from a third party. This third party has nothing to do with this registration.
I just would like to add that I am in congratulatory mode. I recall Dr. Keith Rowley and Prime Minister Motley of Barbados and the Antiguan Prime Minister and a few others, they had CARICOM leaders had a video link conference, and they took a unanimous position, which took a team representing them to the United Nations, and then that team went on to Uruguay to meet with Mexico and a couple other people. All of that at that time to prevent an escalation of issues in Venezuela. And today I would like to congratulate the leaders of the Caribbean for doing that, because as we grapple with the numbers, limited as we've just heard, from factual records, it could have been far worse had there been bombs and bullets flying around in Venezuela. So I'm very proud of the leadership that the region provided to have imposed themselves on a situation that at that time some people felt was heading for the extremities of war. And we are now grappling with the outflow of what is left of all of this, but the situation could have been far worse. And I encourage, as I close on this matter, all those who are here legally or illegally this is your opportunity to come forward in a very human and civilized process and to be registered and to enjoy the benefits that this process would offer as distinct from the adverse consequences for failing so to do.
Just let me clarify. Persons who are here legally are not required to register because they will already have either citizenship, work permits, or permanent residency. So persons who are here legally, no, but once you are here, you can register. Once you are here and you don't have citizenship, permanent residency, or a work permit, you can register.
The period of time for work permit.
Hold on, let me just, I see Ms. Tate is writing down some things. The three categories are work permit, permanent resident, citizen. Okay? I just wanted to, because your colleague was kind of jumping in there. So those are the three categories of persons who are here legally. Okay?
And what is the period of time granted for a work permit? Is it not 90 days?
No, work permits could be a year. Usually it's a year. Okay?
And what is the criteria to obtain permanent residency or citizenship?
It's quite complex. It's in the Immigration Act. You have to be here for a long period of time and legally, present yourself to the authorities and so on. Citizenship is even longer. I think with residency, you have to be here legally for about 5 years, and citizenship is 10. But I mean, you can check that in the Immigration Act.
Through a legal port, but have neither citizenship, residency, or work permit to register.
Wish to remain in Trinidad and Tobago and not be deemed to be an overstayer and get the benefit of this process, then you would have to register. Okay? Does that make that clear? Okay.
You've spoken about cooperating information with the Venezuelan authorities.
I did not speak about that.
Mr. Young has said, so if
No, I did not speak
okay,
about that.
The government has spoken about cooperating this information with the
No,
Venezuelan
I can't go on hearsay. I can't go on hearsay.
So if someone registers, and let's say you're looking to find out if they have a criminal record, the government is going to the Venezuelan authorities to cooperate this.
That is a matter of national security. I can't speak about it. I would ask Mr. Hinds not to speak about that either. But obviously there are concerns. There will be intelligence information that is already being shared with intelligence authorities across the region, not just Venezuela. You have Interpol, as Minister Hinds has pointed out. You have other intelligence organizations. So information will be shared.
My question is, what has been the reaction of the Venezuelan government to this? Now this is a government that's been saying that, well, no, not everything is as bad as you think. This is the international media. So they're looking at us doing this and reacting to the situation of their nationals here. Have they been in contact? What have they said, if anything, about our registration plans?
I'm not aware of any reaction from the Venezuelan government of any kind. I have no information on any reaction of the Venezuelan government to this registration exercise, and I'm not aware of any reaction.
Mr. Carlos Perez, I understand he's in the country. He hasn't presented credentials yet, but I understand he's supposed to present.
We are not aware of any reaction from the Venezuelan government of any kind whatsoever, at all. No comment.
For this cultural, I could call them ambassadors, do you have a cost for that program?
The overall cost of the entire policy is just under $1 million for the year. It's about 800,000. But the ambassadors themselves will not necessarily be paid, but the contract stipulates what they will have to do, and they will receive a small stipend to be able to assist with that.
Minister Hinds, you may have mentioned it before, so forgive me, but is there any...
Before you continue, I just want to reinforce a point. The government of Trinidad and Tobago respects the sovereignty of all other countries in the world and governments, so we don't interfere in the internal affairs of other countries like Venezuela. So therefore, we would not interfere and seek a reaction from the government of Venezuela. No, I'm just saying, but I want to go further. Since we have a policy of non-intervention, we would not initiate the process. Okay?
How are you planning? Is there any sort of plan for people who may, be wary, Venezuelan people eligible to register, if they may be wary of, the government, they might think it's a trap, scared to apply. Do you have any sort of contingency plan, way to comfort them?
From some of the newspaper reports I've seen reports of that, and this is one of the reasons why we are before you again today. This is one of the reasons why we have put a very seamless registration process in place. This is why we have expended so much time and resources to reach out to them in their language and so on. We encourage them. There is no need for fear. This can only bring benefit. So we encourage every one of them to come out. There's no need to fear. This is Trinidad and Tobago. We're giving you an opportunity to be here lawfully. We're giving you an opportunity to work. We are giving you an opportunity to maintain your human dignity. And there's nothing to fear. So we take the opportunity again to encourage every one of them to come and get engaged in this process for all of our benefit.
And just let me clarify, it is most certainly not a trick or a trap or anything sinister at all. It is the opposite. We're simply trying to legalize persons who are currently illegal. We're trying to make something that is wrong, make it right. There's no trap here. We have no sinister motives whatsoever.
Change topic to Shell, this deal that was signed, if we could get some more information.
You'll have to wait until the substantive Prime Minister returns to ask him that question. He's coming back at 9:10 p.m. on Wednesday, the 5th of June, which happens to be a public holiday.
Do you have any reaction to the criticisms that the substantive Minister of National Security, which have come from the opposition, sort of abdicated and...
I am the acting Prime Minister. Mr. Hinds is the acting Minister of National Security, and the Honorable Prime Minister would not have given us these acting appointments if he did not have confidence in the two of us to handle this matter while he and Minister Young are abroad. We are a team, and we are in contact with them as well. And I am of the view, and the Prime Minister is of the view, that we can handle this matter. So there's absolutely no need. The engagement in Europe is very important, and Minister Young has been leading the discussions with the energy companies. I'm sure you're aware of that. There's an empowered team which is headed by the Minister of Energy, and the other minister on that empowered team is the Minister of National Security, Mr. Young. And then you have various technocrats, and they're the ones who have been in face-to-face meetings with BP, BG, not BG, sorry, Shell, BHP, for months, EOG for months. And they have intimate knowledge of the discussions and the agreements and so on. And therefore, it was important that Minister Young be a member of that delegation. And as I said, the Honorable Prime Minister has the confidence in myself and Minister Hinds to handle the matter for the 6 days or so that the team will be abroad. And we have been fully briefed. There was a National Security Council meeting on Friday of last week. I'm a member of the National Security Council in my own right as Minister of Finance. Mr. Hinds is also a member of the National Security Council in his own right as a minister in the Ministry of the Attorney General. We both attended the meeting, and there was a full briefing and a full discussion on the registration and the process and the procedures. There was a very detailed question and answer session, and we were both fully briefed on it. And since then, we have both been fully briefed by the immigration authorities and all those involved. So we are fairly confident we can handle it in the absence of the substantive persons.
As Priya reminded me, a plan, or she accused the government of trying to put the local government elections on the same day as the general elections through change in legislation. Your response?
Not true. That is just nonsense. The local government election is due sometime after the 20th of November 2019. The local government election rules are very different to the general election rules. The local government system is governed by an act which insists that there's a mandatory period of 3 years before an election can be called. So unlike the general, in a general election scenario, the Prime Minister can call another general election within a couple of weeks or a day after the general election, so that any time within the 5 years, and there's an additional period of 3 months, a Prime Minister can call a general election, but not so a local. A local, you have to let the 3 years run out, and then you have a 90-day window to call the election. So the local election can only take place from around the 29th of November to around the 28th of February. It can't take place any other time. But the general election would be constitutionally due in September 2020, and then there's the 90-day period after that. So the possibility of the general election, the local election being held at the same time, I'm not the Prime Minister, so that is his call, not mine, but the possibility is remote. And I would say that the leader of the opposition is just saying things that are just ridiculous. I mean, it's ridiculous. Why on earth would there be a general election this year? For what reason?
Because of the legislation.
The Prime Minister, I have been at the Prime Minister's side when he has said in Parliament and outside of Parliament that elections will be called when they are constitutionally due. Okay, he has made it crystal clear, and that was in the context of this ridiculous allegation about the local government election. He has made it clear, and this Prime Minister has a track record of calling the local elections when they are due. So I see no reason why anybody would want to distort that into some fanciful Nancy story that local election and general election would be held at the same time. That's ridiculous.
Is that it for questions? Okay, well, thank you very much, ministers. Thank you very much to the members of the press who are assembled here today, and thank you very much to the listening and viewing audience in Trinidad and Tobago. Have a nice evening. Happy Union Arrival Day, everyone.
That was live coverage of the weekly post-cabinet media briefing on TTT, Talk City 91.1 FM, and on TTT Live Online on Facebook. Remember, we'll have more on matters coming out of today's briefing in our major newscasts. I'm Mahalia Joseph Wharton. Have a good afternoon.